To prove the reality of gravity, these two elementary school students threw a brick down the stairs every day. It was also this wild behavior that caused a boy passing by to be hit on the head by a brick and die. When they present this nonsense reason in court, the judge said they were not at fault. Because according to Korea's juvenile law, minors under 14 years old will not be criminally charged. So just 3 minutes after the trial opened, these two evil people were acquitted. And what's even scarier is that they didn't feel any remorse at all. Even when leaving the court, they even smiled triumphantly at the victim's mother. The law on the protection of minors was originally intended to help misbehaving teenagers repent, but at this moment, it became a talisman of devil. The father of the unfortunate boy saw his wife crying and suffering, and immediately comforted her. That's the way the law is. I also know that the court gives in to protect the children, but if we insist on leniency, can tolerance really make them repent and change themselves? This possibility is almost non-existent, because in the face of harsh truths, justice is so fragile that when touched it will shatter. 5 years later, two children evil continued to commit crimes. They got a young girl drunk and took her to a deserted construction site. Then he called 4 more accomplices, and together they played tricks on the victim, tolerating the crime. 5 years ago, turned into sowing the seeds of maturity for the devil. It wasn't until early the next morning that Siona was found without clothes on her body by a worker. She fell into a coma on the body with many wounds due to abuse. Luckily, the worker reported it to the police in time, saving Siona's life because she was drugged with alcohol. Siona only vaguely remembered the scene that happened last night. She only remembered about 3 people abusing her, but she did not wait until the police launched an investigation. Siona was mentally terrorized by people on social networks. With the dirtiest words, they always said that the victim was the guilty one. This caused Siona, who was already severely psychologically damaged. Now she couldn't stand everyone's insults. She finally decided to end her life. Luckily, her father discovered it in time, so he was able to save his daughter. The father couldn't hold back his anger, so he personally went to meet, in June, the person who called his daughter out. But the devil did not apologize and blatantly said that, before doing that, they had received Siona's consent. So it's a voluntary relationship. Initially, they intended to find somewhere along the road, but considering the possibility of being discovered by others at any time, they went to the construction site together to confirm the order in which they carried out their depraved acts. They also played guessing numbers, then abused Sion in turn. Moreover, In-jun proudly told the father that the 2 older brothers played with his daughter first in all sorts of positions. Then it was his turn. But because he was drunk, he couldn't do anything. Even though Sion-a was drunk at that time, she still fought back fiercely, which made him very regretful. The father scolded Hwang In-jun for being crazy, but he was still very proud and said, "You are her biological father. So you probably don't understand our happy feeling." The father couldn't bear it anymore. So in the end hit him, but because of beating a minor, the father was locked up in a detention center. And what's even more ridiculous is that the recording of In-jun's confession was also said to be fabricated evidence. Because he was forced, so this cannot become evidence in court. In the end, this case was transferred to Yoon Seok, the judge of the juvenile court. When she saw In-jun's full name and personal documents, Yoon Seok's whole body suddenly trembled. She couldn't control her emotions at all. In the end, she couldn't stand anymore and fainted. It turned out that she was the mother who lost her child 5 years ago. After that wild trial, Yoon Seok was determined to becoming a judge in the juvenile court. She devoted her life to judging those demons in human guise. She finally achieved her wish. She did not easily forgive the perpetrator of the case. 5 years ago, after waking up, she immediately returned to the court. According to Woo, in Jin's testimony, he was actually only followed the orders of 2 other people. Initially, they only intended to drag Sona out to drink and had no intention of doing anything. Moreover, at that time, he did not join the other group of people in harming Siona. He even tried to stop their criminal acts but was insulted by the other 2 people. In the end, he kept walking around the construction site, waiting for the other 2 people to come out. Then the court announced that only the DNA of the other 2 people was found in Siona's body. Moreover, they also admitted their crimes unequivocally because they were 14 years old. So a few days later, the investigation and handling of the case would be conducted. Follows the criminal case of teenagers, but Yeon Sup doubts the results of this trial. She originally intended to quietly investigate the truth, but her husband, who divorced 5 years ago, suddenly came to see her. Yoon Seok thought he would help her, but she didn't expect that he would bring up the law to threaten her. So she should avoid participating in this case because she had a blood relationship with the victim of the old case. Yoon Seok asked him indifferently where he got involved in my work. "What does it have to do with you if the matter has come to this point?" The husband replied that because I am his father, he said, "Are you planning to take revenge on me now? Doing that won't change anything. In the end, the person who gets hurt will still be you." But Yoon Seok still firmly replied that I didn't care, you just kept your eyes wide open to see. Wang In-jun would definitely face the heaviest punishment. 3 days later the trial opened, but Yoon Seok did not even call the suspect. But she called In Jun, who had always pretended to be innocent, to come to court first. In addition to repeating his previous testimony this time, In Jun also said that he was threatened by his two older brothers. So he helped them do bad things. Even though he didn't want to do that, the lawyer also showed photos of injuries on his body as evidence. The lawyer said that this case inherently stems from an unfair power relationship. He knew Dong Jun and Kung Soo outside of school. He often had to buy cigarettes or alcohol for them for a long time if he argued he would be beaten. But Unso keenly discovered the contradiction in No's. In John's before and after testimony, if he was so afraid of the two older brothers and listened to them so much, then why did he dare to speak up to stop the other two on the night of the crime? Hearing that, In Jun was stunned on the spot. Yoon Seok continued to ask why he dared to disobey them just this time. At this moment, the lawyer stood up to defend and said that In Jun was indeed very afraid of the threats and attacks from the big brothers. But before she could finish her sentence, In Jun spoke up himself. He sobbed and said, because this time it was unacceptable, we were all human beings, so why would we commit such a crime? If it were anyone else, perhaps they would have been deceived by his innocent appearance. But Yoon Seok already knew the shameless face of this bastard. She gave In Jun the last chance to tell the truth, or she would judge him harshly, but he still refused to admit it. Yoon Seok reluctantly had to call a witness to appear in court. This person is also the police officer in charge of investigating this case. The two met each other 3 days ago. At that time, Yoon Seok suspected that there was still evidence other than the perpetrator's DNA. So she took advantage of the quiet late at night to go to the scene of the crime. As a result, she encountered the contractor coming to the construction site every night to park his car, and at the same time, received a video recording of the scene that happened that night, was recorded by the dashcam on this man's car. The video captured the scene where the whole group gathered to drink, and then got Sona drunk. After Sona got drunk, the whole group laughed and roared with contempt. They prepared their act of trespassing. The scene was clearly recorded by dashcam. The truth is that all three people were including Wons. In Jun took turns abusing Sona. Furthermore, In Jun himself had malicious intent and was not forced as he initially testified. This time he cannot deny it anymore. Defense lawyers still wanted to deny and say that the video recorded by this dashcam was likely a fallacy, but at this time, the other police officer presented documents to prove the authenticity of the video analyzed by the analysis department. In the document confirming that the video was extracted from the dashcam, and there were no traces of falsification. Finally, because of providing false testimony, In Jun was identified as an accomplice. So he will be transferred to the juvenile criminal court for reinvestigation, and will complete the investigation within a week, and open a sentencing hearing. But before the opening day of the trial, Judge Taiju ran over in a panic. It turned out he found new clues from another case. There was still another person involved in that group abuse. This person's name was Do Hyun. Yoon Seok did not dare to believe it, because this guy named Do Hyun is the other devil who killed her son. This time, the two devils committed a crime together, so she will take this opportunity to settle the debt from 5 years ago, forcing them to pay for their crimes. Unexpectedly at this moment, a woman rushed forward, waved her hand, and slapped her directly in the face. This woman said, "I warned you, I will definitely find you, you can't hide for the rest of your life." It turns out this person is Yoon Seok's ex-mother-in-law. She defiantly placed all the responsibility for her nephew's death on Yoon Seok. This woman blames her refused to quit her job to stay home and take care of the children, and said that she was the one who ruined their family. Her son had a hard time getting ready to marry a new wife. Unexpectedly, she showed up and continued to be involved with him. Seeing this woman who was unruly and deliberately causing trouble, Yoon Seok didn't want to get involved with her. So Yoon Seok turned around and left, but her mother-in-law still chased after her and refused to let her go. Yoon Seok sat in the corner, listening to the scoldings, her heart feeling like it was being torn into pieces. After her unfortunate son passed away, she still couldn't escape that obsession. Her house was empty without any life. Although the needle is very small, it can pierce people's hearts. The mouth of the tongue is boneless, but it hurts people deeply, and her pain that lasted for 5 years stemmed from a cause that sounded like a joke. Moreover, in the eyes of those juvenile criminals, this case is really their joke. The mother-in-law caused a stir in the court, leading to everyone knowing about the case. 5 years ago, Judge Jun he also knew the truth, and coincidentally, she was the same judge who acquitted the two demons 5 years ago. But to this day, she still believes that her judgment at that time was not wrong. She also said that if it were assigned to another judge, the result's still the same. Hearing that Yoon Seok couldn't help but question her, in the end, who is the law to serve? The law is created to protect the victim or the perpetrator. If in the past Joan he decided to punish the two demons at an appropriate level, not through the loudspeaker of the sentence within 3 minutes, today's tragedy would not have happened. They completely failed to learn the lesson from the previous case, but they automatically believed that they were truly innocent. When they see that the law is full of loopholes, they will continue to hurt more innocent people. Hearing that June he clenched her fists. Of course, she knew that what Yoon Seok said was not wrong. But she still didn't want to admit her mistake. This person only used the excuse that Yoon Seok had a blood relationship with the victim of the old case to ask her not to interfere in this case, but Yoon Seok would never stop. She looked at Sona. Now it's like looking at her son in the past. She absolutely will not allow the old wild verdict to appear again. Fortunately, Judge Taiju has found a new clue. In another sexual assault case, he accidentally collects information about Do Hyun. The victim is now pregnant, according to her testimony. In June and Do Hyun formed a criminal gang. They control many young girls who go astray. They specialize in performing extortion scams at cheap motels. They blackmail customers with the crime of playing tricks on girls. Every time the young men in the gang make a lot of money, there are young girls who are blinded by money, so they actively join their gang. But in the end, they realize that they are just a tool to make money for this bad guys. These girls are not given money and are even threatened with their lives when they try to escape their control, so they feel angry inside, but don't dare to say it out loud. As for this girl, she managed to escape after a Sir In June was arrested. After understanding the situation, Yoon Soo quickly took action. She continuously searched for a few girls controlled by criminal gangs and received evidence of their more terrible crimes. It turned out that in the past, there were many girls who failed to escape and were captured by those beasts and took turns raping. Moreover, they also recorded the whole abuse process. They not only used those videos to force girls to become prostitutes, but they also illegally trade online at will. They are inhumane people with no humanity left. From the girl's words, Yoon Seo quickly learned of Do's criminal lair. So when there was no one at night, she quietly sneaked in, intending to take away all the evidence of the crime they had stored on the computer. But at this moment, a figure suddenly appeared behind her. He suddenly asked her who she was. Was she a police officer? He smiled happily. Yoon Seok suddenly realized he was Do Hyun. What? At this moment, Do Hyun couldn't laugh anymore. He startled and cursed her and rushed in to hit Yoon Seok. Continuously kicked her and kept cursing her. He angrily asked her if she knew how much the things in the computer were worth. Yoon Seok slowly stopped questioning him. If he had been given the chance, he should have lived a decent life. At least one of the two, them should live kindly as a human being. Yoon Seok didn't understand why he could live in such a miserable way. But even though Yoon Seok collapsed, Do Han still acted like nothing happened and said, "What the hell were you talking about?" Finally, he pulled out a knife and stabbed her straight in the shoulder without any fear. He even turned the knife and asked who exactly is she. While he was about to give Yoon Seok another knife, she grabbed the brick next to her and hit Do Hyun directly in the head. During the struggle, Yoon Seok looked up at the shoe cabinet and discovered Sona's missing shoe at the scene of the abuse. It turned out to be Do Hyun is truly an accomplice of the collective abuse. The display cabinet of such shoes covers one wall. There is no doubt that each shoe symbolizes an unfortunate girl who has been abused. At this time, Do Hyun also stepped forward and admitted that he was also present at the scene. He even smirked and challenged Yoon Seok to do what she wanted to do after knowing the truth. Finally, he gritted his teeth and rushed towards her. His mind suddenly came up with the idea of killing people to cover up the clues, and Yoon Seok was struggling in pain. Right at the critical moment, a police siren suddenly sounded outside. It turned out that Yoon Seok had contacted the criminal police in charge of this case from the beginning. When Do Hyun saw that he could only hastily left the scene, but he was quickly arrested by the police, and at the same time, all evidence of the crime was taken away. Unsik refused treatment. Her whole body was covered in blood and returned to the court. She wanted to use her body to change Judge Jun Hee's verdict. She told the judge their crimes. She told all about how they had abused the victims and used them to make money. Judge Jun Hee, seeing her collapse in pain, quickly told her to leave. She advised Yoon Seok to quickly go to the hospital before she called an ambulance. But Yoon Seok endured the pain and earnestly called the judge. Judge Jun Hee, no matter how tough she is, must be touched by this scene. A week later, the court opened the trial. The malicious female lawyer still stubbornly defended, in June, she claiming that if Seon-a's body did not have In Jun's DNA, then it would be impossible to prove that he committed a crime. She also took out a forged good student certificate to prove that In Jun, usually a diligent student who is studious and always to help people. In Jun was unfortunately threatened. So, when he received the police investigation, he did not explain in detail what happened. At the same time, the female lawyer also took out photos of In Jun's previous injuries as evidence, and the same was true about Do Hyun. The two immediately turned to push all the responsibility through the two juniors so that they could bear the blame on their behalf. It was obvious that before attending the trial, the female lawyer had carefully researched the judge's previous trials. Based on Judge Jun Hee's previous quick trial method, it was very likely this case will also be judged innocent as before. But Jun Hee remembered what Yoon Seok once said. She played the recording of the confession of the two remaining juniors. Actually, Taiju succeeded in inciting them to betray the two seniors. If all available evidence is used to make a verdict, it is very likely that these two juniors, Kong Soo and Dong Jun, will be identified as the culprits, and both may eventually be convicted more than 10 years in prison, with a fixed term. But if Kong Soo and Dong Jun now honestly declare it will be considered as atonement, both can have their sentences reduced. After hearing this, Kong Soo and Dong Jun just can honestly declare everything. Dong Jun affirmed that everything was done by Do Hyun. Kwang Soo continued to say that if they did not listen to Do Hyun, he would beat them. He said Dong Jun was also assaulted by Do Hyun. When Do Hyun heard this in the courtroom, he immediately expressed his discomfort. In June also began to get angry. Seeing that the situation was not good, the female defense lawyer quickly stood up, objected. She affirmed that these words were only a one-sided confession. There was absolutely no direct evidence to prove of Gum in Jun's guilt, but they could not expect that these two juniors would silently leaving a way out for themselves. After each mission, they both silently copied documents onto a USB. Judge Gon he released the evidence of that crime in court. This made Do Hyun, and In Jun cannot refute. Do Hyun looked at each evidence photo. He remembered the scene where they abused the victim. After the abuse, they laughed and took pictures as souvenirs. But the victim's family members, when they saw this scene, could only shed tears full of anger. Despite that, Do Yeon still refused to repent, and In Jun realized that disaster was about to come. So the psychological defense line completely collapsed. He stood in front of the court and insisted that all his actions were caused by Do Hyun. Do Hyun heard this and quickly objected, so the two argued loudly in the middle of the trial and finally used force. Completely not giving the judge the opportunity to interrogate, they competed to denounce each other's crimes. In Jun was beaten with his mouth full of blood, but he still kept scolding Do Hyun for being a bastard who only knows how to think about girls and is also a pervert who collects women's shoes. Both In Jun and Do Hyun have proven themselves to be the culprits. Judge Jun he didn't say much to them either. She wanted to let the victim's son end this trial. Actually, Sun didn't want to testify. She felt that she had no face to live on. There were even many times when she thought about committing suicide, but Yoon Seok advised her. Yoon Seok said that the people who should feel the most ashamed in this world should be those criminals, including duels. In Jun and Do Hyun, also including scum people who like to relieve themselves online, they are the ones who deserve to die. The fact that the victim takes their own life will only make this guy more overbearing and dirty. Only when Seona herself goes to court to attend the trial will she be able to hold her head high in the future and confidently continue to live. So Seona bravely spoke up in court. She trembled and said, "Please make my life go back to the way it was before." Those words seemed to use up all the courage of her entire life. As soon as she finished speaking, she couldn't hold back her tears. Her sobs spread to the courtroom, causing everyone to choke in pain. That the only two perpetrators were not In Jun and Do Hyun were finally sentenced to 20 years in prison. Although the process of the case was tortuous and difficult, it can still be considered a complete result. But the pain they left behind will never disappear. The victim has to live with the pain for the rest of life. For example, Un Selk had to live like a soulless corpse for many years. Even though the murderer who killed her son had been punished, the longing buried deep in her heart had completely burst out at this moment. Looking at each of her son's relics, she cried out in pain. After seeing the photo of her son for the last time, Yoon Suk brought all the relics to the memorial house. She burned everything for her son in heaven. Her life must continue. After this incident, Yoon Seok was no longer entangled in anything. She buried herself in the trial of juvenile criminals. The next day, Unsik received a case of dismemberment that shocked the whole country. A 13-year-old boy tricked a boy. 8-year-old entered the house. After the brutal murder, the corpses braked and threw the body on the rooftop late at night. But strangely, after committing the crime, he ran to the police station and confessed, saying that he had killed someone. When the police heard that, he were extremely surprised. Then he pulled out an axe stained with blood. He said he committed the crime alone. According to his description, the police quickly found the victim on the rooftop, then immediately arrested the perpetrator. This teenager named Sung Woo lived in the same building as the 8-year-old victim. Moreover, the two had never met before and had no hatred at all. Typical for the case of intentionally committing a malicious crime. News of the case spread quickly, attracting the attention of public opinion. Because Sung Woo was not yet 14 years old. So according to Korea's law on the protection of minors, he will be exempted from criminal liability. At most, he will only be sent to a re-education camp for 2 years. This immediately stimulates the people to protest for the abolition of the juvenile protection law, must punish the perpetrator. Give life for life. Late at night, Yoon Suk sat reading Sung Woo's documents. She discovered that he had dropped out of high school as soon as he entered high school. He had a record of intentionally causing injury many times. He lived a single-parent family and suffering from severe schizoaffective disorder. He had to take medicine to stay awake, and this was very likely to be the reason he escaped crime. Indeed, Yoon Seok guessed right. According to Sung Woo's testimony that day, his illness suddenly relapsed. He was panicking, and the other boy came to borrow his phone. Sung-woo tried to stay awake and lead the boy home. But because the children were playful, this boy saw a lot of toys in the house, so he stayed in Sung-woo's house for a long time. The boy insisted that Sung-woo play with him. Sung-woo was bothered by the boy, so he couldn't help but kill people. Sung-woo rushes in and grabs the boy by the neck and tells him to play hide and seek with him. If I haven't found you yet, you have to hide somewhere. If you go out on your own or let me find you, I'll kill you. The boy was scared, so he had to hide under the bed. But in the end, he was still caught by Sung-woo. After laughing happily, he started committing the crime. He also enjoyed recounting everything in court. This made everyone disgusted and resentful because he knew clearly that he was not old enough to commit the crime. Not criminally responsible, so his attitude was extremely defiant. His appearance without panic or remorse made everyone present very angry. It wasn't until the break in the middle of the hour that Sung-woo's mother came to leisurely over. She didn't come to apologize. But as soon as she opened her mouth, she brought up the juvenile protection law. She asked the court to be lenient. Yoon Seok angrily asked her apologize to the victim's family first, and then talked about other things. After that, the victim's mother also came to court. Yoon Seok saw the other party's miserable crying appearance and was touched. She couldn't help but get wet eyes. The mother did not have any other requests, but just wanted the perpetrator to receive a suitable punishment. The mother knew that the court could not accept gifts, so she cooked some of her son's favorite dishes to give to Yoon Seok. That night, Yoon Seok took out that portion of rice and enjoyed it carefully. At this moment, the responsibility on her shoulders seemed even heavier. She stayed up all night studying documents. The next day, Sung-woo went to court again, facing the judge's question. The more he answered, the more impatient he became, as if he wanted to get away with the crime as quickly as possible. So he took out his medical records to prove that his schizoaffective disorder had gotten worse. Mental illness combined with being under 14 years old. Sung-woo was confident of winning. But when Yoon Seok saw that she smirked, looked straight into Sung-woo's eyes, and said he wasn't the murderer, right? It turned out that the night before, when she read the document, she discovered something unusual. That is, schizoaffective disorder syndrome often has symptoms such as auditory hallucinations and hallucinations. Common sense would not be able to afford to do such complicated things alone. As well as the inability to concentrate thoughts, there is no need to mention what needs to be done after killing, such as completing the cleanup of the crime scene. Moreover, has the ability to neatly erase traces, something that even an adult may not be able to do. Yet he can not only dismember and clean up the crime scene, but even complete the disposal of the body itself. This shows that there was definitely a third person involved in the scene, and that was the real perpetrator of the case. Sung-woo, who is not yet 14 years old, can be so arrogant, there must have been collusion from before. And he deliberately stepped forward to confess. This is absolutely not just Yoon Seok's speculation. That she checked the camera in the elevator where the crime occurred, they discovered traces of a third person, a female student named Yi-yoon. After hearing this, Sung-woo lost his temper and shouted that it wasn't her, she had nothing to do with this incident. But Sung-woo's act of losing his temper further proved that Yoon Seok's speculations were completely correct. The court also collected the two people's call history as evidence, and they learned that before the incident, he had very close contact with Yi-yoon. Sung-woo saw that and wanted to snatch the photo back. Even though from beginning to end he never said a word, but the truth was finally clarified. Sung-woo was arrested and taken to the procuracy. Then Yoon Seok told Tae-ju to go to the police station to extract the camera, and discovered that, when Sung-won came to confess, he was always looking in one direction. And the person standing opposite the police at that time was Yi-yoon to catch her. Tae-yu initially went to meet her old classmate first, knowing that every night she would go to the internet shop to open overnight. Yoon Seok grasped the situation and decided to start taking action that night, but unexpectedly was stopped by Sung-woo's mother. She has a pitiful appearance and asks Yoon Seok to release her son. But the poor person also had very hateful moments, if just begging or threatening could help the criminal escape the crime. Unsek's job no longer had any meaning. She didn't want to explain too much, then decisively stepped on the accelerator and drove away. Soon, Unsek went to the internet shop and found Yan. At the same time, she also clarified her identity. Then Yan also stood up and obediently cooperated. But when she reached the turn, she suddenly jumped out and tried my best to run away. But now running was meaningless. After a fierce chase, Yi-yoon was finally stopped in a narrow dead end. Yoon Seok looked at her with an expressionless expression and cold eyes. Her eyes clearly expressed extreme hatred, which would make any juvenile criminal shudder. Yeon dropped out of school in the 10th grade. Her parents were busy with business and did not want to waste time, so they spent a large amount of money to hire a lawyer to defend Yeon. Through this, it can be seen that behind a minor child who has lost way, often by irresponsible parents. In the face of Yoon Seok's sharp interrogations, Yeon maintained an innocent face and refused to open her mouth because the lawyer had previously told her to use guardianship. Until Ye-yoon saw the conversation history, she remained silent. Yoon Seok had no other choice but to show the surveillance video close to the day of the incident. She asked why Yeon was present at the crime scene area. Han Yeon was now confused and clenched her fists. Her eyes also turned back and forth. She slowly answered, "I just sharing the elevator with Sung-woo." She innocently asked if that was a crime. Although Yeon refused to admit guilt, the truth was that she appeared at the crime scene. So Yoon Seok used the reason that Yeon was a serious suspect in the case. She asked the police to detain Yeon, but Yeon's lawyer quickly came up with a countermeasure. The very next day, she hired a public opinion navigator to slander the court. Also published information that Judge Yoon Seok forcibly detained a minor, and denounced her for seriously violating the normal investigation process. And moreover, she also has a negative view towards juvenile criminals. They also think that Yoon Seok is not worthy of becoming a juvenile crime judge. After learning that the chief judge of the juvenile court very angry, but Yoon Seok was not afraid at all, she strongly objected. At least the court must expose the truth. Isn't this the duty of law enforcers like them? If juvenile delinquency after adulthood is even more evil and hurts more people, then who will be responsible? Yoon Seok affirmed that they must let these juvenile criminals know how scary the law is. They need to educate juvenile criminals that if they hurt others, they will have to pay a heavy price. If parents feel sorry for their children and want to protect their children, then the family needs to cooperate with the court. Yoon Seok thinks that this is the reason why she is standing here. She also questioned the chief judge. She asked what wrong she had done. That made him so angry that he threw things and raised his voice at her. In response to Yoon Seok's legitimate and sharp questions, the chief judge pointed knowing how to stay silent. Of course, he also knew that what Yoon Seok said was correct. He just didn't want the court to suffer scandal and lose its reputation, thereby affecting the reputation of the judicial department. But justice is in each person's heart. Credibility is built not only on online speech, but also rely on fair and transparent adjudication and adjudication. Yoon Seok said that she will never forgive easily for any juvenile criminal. Then she called Tae-yu to visit Sung-woo's mother, informing her that there was a third person at the scene at the time of the crime. If she can advise her son to take the initiative to surrender, he will definitely be lenient. At first sight, Sung-woo's mother recognized Yeon. Although she didn't believe it, she still decided to agree because of her son. Soon the day of the trial came. Indeed, Sung-woo had completely changed his old stubborn attitude. Standing in front of the court, Sung-woo said that everything was because he received Yeon's instructions. On the day of the incident, Yeon kidnapped the boy to someone's house. The person who murdered the victim was also Yeon. He only provided the place to commit the crime. Moreover, before that heartbreaking incident happened, he did not know. See, Yeon killed people. Sung-woo was terrified and couldn't believe it. He scolded her for being crazy. He didn't know what to do now, but Yeon said we were both accomplices, we could both live. After hearing him testify like that in court, Yeon completely did not expect Sung-woo to betray her. But the lawyer had prepared in advance for the situation. She still kept the original way of speaking. The lawyer said that Yeon had a very severe delusional disorder. The doctor who treated her even went to court to testify. Even a small incident in life can lead to a recurrence of the disease. They can't control their angry emotions, so they hurt others. Her motive for committing the crime is difficult to confirm. If Yeon was in a state of delusional disorder at the time of the crime, there is no way to convict her. However, there is still another very important question, which is Yeon's delusional disorder syndrome and Sung-woo's schizoaffective disorder syndrome both have the same characteristic: the absolute inability to perform the act of dismembering the body and cleaning up the crime scene. Then who exactly did those things? At this moment, Yeon suddenly called Sung-woo's name and said that it was Sung-woo who asked her did so. He stood outside the bathroom and taught her how to cut up the victim's body. Teach her to put the body parts in a garbage bag to bury the body. She climbed up to the water tank on the rooftop and threw away the body bag. It was Sung-woo who threatened her to do so. Sung-woo heard it and shouted and said that it was Yeon who did it herself. At that time, she said she wouldn't be caught on the surveillance camera. She is lying. Everything was caused by herself. He did not say anything wrong. But Yeon still sobbed and said that he was standing outside the bathroom guiding her act. But Sung-woo said it was because she asked him to do so. He wanted to confess, but Yeon refused to listen. Then Yeon did not acknowledge Sung-woo's words. Sung-woo said she herself chose that axe. After killing the boy, she still danced excitedly. The two kept blaming each other. No one would give up. At this moment, the victim's mother shouted for both of them to shut up. Her expression filled with anger, filled with pain. She begged the other two to stop talking. Whether it was delusional persecutory syndrome or schizoaffective disorder, it didn't matter to the victim's parents. She just knew that her son was lured to their home by a stranger and finally died in pain and despair without his mother by his side. Just thinking about this, the mother could not suppress the pain in her heart. She immediately requested all the judges and the chief judge at the court not to let this heartbreaking incident happen again. They must punish the perpetrator severely. The whole court suddenly fell silent. Just have the mother's painful cries. The chief judge announced a temporary break. After discussing with his colleagues, the chief judge still decided to follow Yoon Seok's opinion, sentenced Yeon to 20 years in prison. And Sung-woo will be sent to a youth re-education camp for 2 years. After hearing this, Yeon screamed and did not accept the verdict. How could she be imprisoned for 20 years? He got mad, cursed everyone and caused chaos in court, and Sung-woo bowed his head with a regretful expression. Everyone knows that children like Yeon are completely irreducible. Even if she is imprisoned for 20 years, after being released from prison, she will probably continue to become the scum of society. This is also a reluctant aspect of the law, but at least the court has promoted its inherent effectiveness. If parents had taught their children properly, heartbreaking tragedies would not have happened. But just by looking at the fact that until the day of the trial, Yeon's parents still did not show up, you can see what kind of people her parents are. If parents do not try to teach, then the children will never change. Back to the time before the incident, Yeon was sitting alone, when suddenly, a boy approached her and tapped her shoulder and asked to borrow her phone for a moment. The boy wanted to call his mother. After hearing the boy call his mother, Yeon's face immediately changed. It could be guessed that there was something unusual about the relationship between her and her mother. Perhaps right from the moment an evil thought arose in Yoon's heart. After the trial, Sung-woo's mother went to Judge Tae-ju and said that he had clearly promised a lenient trial, so he must release her son immediately. Seeing her dissatisfied attitude, Won-so couldn't help but speak up and say that the sentence for Sung-woo was already very light. If she was not satisfied, she could appeal. At that time, she will consider carefully how many years she should sentence Sung-woo to prison. Hearing that Sung-woo's mother turned away in fear, An Seok then told her there was an idiom called gut-wrenching pain. To refer to the pain a parent feels when losing a child is no different from the pain of having a broken liver or intestines. What she did for him when Sung-woo was 9 years old, the victim of this case was only 9 years old. That boy's mother had lost her child forever. It was all because of her son. Yoon Seok's words made Sung-woo's mother was very emotional. It wasn't until late at night when she came home and saw the blood stains on the floor that she felt the pain. The crime that was committed can never be erased. Now she regrets, but it was too late. The murder case that shocked the whole country, although it ended here, it didn't mean everything was over. Do these juvenile delinquents really repent of their crimes? Will they continue to commit crimes again during the re-education period? No one can guarantee this. The next day, the court suddenly received a phone call denouncing regarding the youth reformatory camp that the director was suspected of embezzling sponsorship money and abusing children. After receiving this news, Yoon Seok and Tae-ju immediately went to the reformatory to investigate. They took turns asking questions to the young girl. The results terrified the two, each of whom suffered varying degrees of abuse. For example, every time they eat, the director will feed them stale rice and cook new rice for her daughter. Once someone gives an opinion and refuses to eat, she will take their rice bowl and throw it on the ground, and said, "Girls like you don't even have rice at home, but dare to be picky about what they eat." After that, she didn't let them eat anymore. The girls had to bow their heads and apologize to this woman and promised to speak more politely. They begged her to let them eat, but the director asked in return, wasn't she already full? If she's full, then go to her room to rest. The girl continued to cry, admitted her mistake, but was insulted by this woman. The woman yelled at her not to cry, they would only bring bad luck to her. If she dared to cry again, the director would not show mercy. The director immediately asked the girl to go upstairs. Not only that, they were also forced to go to the homes of people in the area to do housework to earn extra income. If they dared to resist, they would be beaten. There was even a girl whose bones were broken and had to be hospitalized and is still lying in the hospital bed. Although these juvenile criminals are brought here for re-education, it is too much to this extent. Yoon Seok and Tae-ju immediately investigated the reformatory's books all night, quickly found evidence of the director's embezzlement of funding. The next day, they called her in for questioning. But unexpectedly, she told a story is completely contrary to the testimony of the juvenile criminals. She has been dedicated to taking care of them for a long time, but the girls are not satisfied, constantly asking to smoke while eating rice. After the director refused that stubborn request, they immediately cursed her and broke the dishes on the table. She asked them what they were going to do. Don't they know how to appreciate food? So a spiteful girl said that she was going to say that the kind of girl they were at home without even eating. Now you dare to be picky about the soup, right? This woman told them not to look at her like that. Her tolerance is limited. So the girl declared that she would not eat, stood up, kicked the chair and left. This woman scolded her to stop eating. She was not qualified to eat. At this time, the director's daughter Kim stood up and said that it was just early in the morning, so what are you doing? The girls imitated Kim A's words while laughing loudly. The director did not dare to do anything to them. In the end, she could only stay silent, cleaning up the piles of things on the floor, and having to do housework for the people in the area. Actually, there is a reason. When the construction of this juvenile crime re-education camp was first built, it was strongly opposed by people in the area. Everyone thinks that juvenile offenders should not appear in the area where they live. Therefore, in order to ease relations with the people in the village, the director personally led them to people's homes to help them work. Moreover, they also organize collective activities with the purpose of changing prejudices in people's hearts. However, human nature is difficult to change. They still bully those who repent and try to reform even cruel to the point of breaking people's legs to confirm whether the director's testimony was true or not. Yoon Seo called the other girls into the office, then made a phone call to the hospital. Finally, the truth is clear, indeed honesty cannot sensitize evil. For juvenile criminals like that, they must be punished so severely that they fear the law from the bottom of their hearts. Then Yoon Seok went to the hospital to visit the injured girl, only to find out that the director embezzled the sponsorship money not for personal gain, but to pay her hospital bills. She was still thinking too optimistically about juvenile criminals. Because if this matter was exposed in front of everyone, they would be punished by the law again. So the director silently embezzled public funds. This girl said that after being discharged from the hospital, she would work hard to make up for this money. She also begged Yoon Seok not to close the reformatory because she truly considered that place her home. She also considered the director as her mother because after coming to the reformatory camp, she knew what it felt like to be loved. Someone picks up the food and puts it in his bowl. She told herself that after the end of the renovation period, she must live kindly. She also set a new goal for her life. She wanted to repay the director's gratitude. After realizing that she misunderstood the director, Yoon Seok immediately drove to the reformatory that night, but only saw a messy pile. It seemed like there had been a fight here. Moreover, the whereabouts of the juvenile criminals and the director were unknown. Only the director's daughter, Kim is left here. Yoon Seok immediately asked the girl what happened. Kim said her mother had just been taken away by ambulance. Yoon Seok couldn't believe it after hearing it. When she learned that the reformatory was about to be closed, the director suddenly became so excited that she fainted on the spot. Because of this, Kim was overly agitation. She thought her mother had been harmed by those juvenile criminals. She even thought it was because of them that she couldn't see her father. Her mother told her that her father was sent abroad to work and couldn't return. But it was all a lie because her parents divorced a long time ago. Just because of this place, her mother refused to let go. Because of this damn re-education center, it was all caused by those bad girls. In a few days, her younger sister had very severe menstrual cramps and was even taken to the hospital. But in the end, her mother still did not go to pick her up because compared to her biological daughter who is lying in the hospital room, it is even more important to feed full those spoiled daughters every time she considers others more important than her own daughter. Now in September knows that the denunciation phone call was not called by those juvenile criminals, but Kim because of her mother. She wanted to borrow this excuse to close the reformatory. Luckily, the director had nothing to worry about, but the group of juvenile criminals took the opportunity to run away together. After they are no longer bound, the seeds of evil hidden deep in their hearts are also about to explode. Everyone immediately ran to the nearby police station to report the crime, then divided into groups to find their whereabouts. At this moment, a girl suddenly proactively contacted them. It turned out she was one of a group of juvenile criminals who actively ran away. She said that a girl named Young Na forced all the other girls to work as prostitutes at the motel to make money. The call was unfinished. Suddenly Young Na appeared and captured her. Upon receiving this news, Yoon Seok's group immediately took action. But at this time, the girl was locked in the room. Young Na was still standing downstairs watching. The girl wanted to take this opportunity to escape. Unexpectedly, at this moment a man suddenly entered the room without saying anything. He immediately used a chain to lock the door. The girl asked him what he was doing and why he locked the door. This man turned around and calmly said that these days there are too many people who take money and then run away. So he had to be careful, taking advantage of the time this man was taking a shower. The girl quickly opened his backpack to look for a key. Unexpectedly, she was so scared that she almost screamed because in her backpack there were only those things and no other items. Not even her wallet had any money. So the girl had to try to unlock the man's phone to report to the police. But at that moment, the sound of running water suddenly stopped. The girl was assaulted by the man. The man thought she was planning to prank him, so he continuously beat her, scolded her for trying to cheat him of his money. But luckily, Yoon Seok brought the police here to search. They checked each room in turn, and in the room, the girl broke a bottle of wine. Threatening this man if dared to take a step forward, she would immediately commit suicide, and then he would have to go to jail. He thought the girl was planning to trick him. He even told her to just stab her. At this time, a voice came from outside the door. The police are here to investigate. Please cooperate with the police. The girl listened, immediately shouted for help. Seeing that his evil deeds were about to be exposed, the angry man wanted to kill the girl. Right at the critical moment, the police outside heard strange noises in the room, so they promptly broke down. The door rushed in. The man tried to jump out the window to escape, but was immediately arrested by the police. In the end, all the other girls were found and taken away. But Yong Na was nowhere to be found. After questioning the girls, the police knew that Kim knew that Yong Na had deep feelings for her mother. So that night, when talking to Yong Na, she lied that her mother was critically ill. So Yoon Seok and the director went to Yong Na's mother's residence. Indeed, she quickly found Yong Na sitting on the stairs. Her face was covered in blood, and she didn't look very well. Last night, she actually came here to find the superintendent, but she was not at all critically ill and had found a new joy. Moreover, the director was extremely disgusted with Kim, even though she was his biological daughter. At this moment, there was a voice. A man called out from inside the house and asked, "Who was it, honey?" Young Na's mother immediately replied that it was nothing. It was probably some senseless child who pressed the doorbell by mistake, then slammed the door right in front of Young Na. BBC, cause she had to live in a family where her parents divorced when she was young and her mother abandoned her when she was young. Young Na was very deprived of love. She admired the children who grew up in the parents' protection. Her mother's attitude made her unable to contain her emotions. From love to hatred, she immediately ran back and frantically knocked on her door. She was banging on the door and screaming. A man opened the door and asked who she was. Young Na frantically wanted to rush into the house but was stopped by the man. He scolded her for being crazy. The mother watched her daughter being beaten by her lover without saying a word, even turning a blind eye. Children who are often hurt often tend to abuse themselves. Moreover, it will be easy to commit crimes or blend in with thugs in society, eventually completely turning into criminals. In fact, from the beginning, they know clearly that their behavior is wrong, but still intentionally committed the crime. Because they wanted the pain of torturing themselves to also hurt their blood relatives. In fact, the purpose of the other girls and Young Na was very simple. They just want to attract the attention of adults, want to let them know their pain. Most of all, they hope that adults will not ignore them. But the results are not as expected. In fact, most criminal behavior all originates from family circumstances. Courts or reformatories only have a supportive effect. The biggest cause of crime in adolescence is still the lack of love. This problem will never be resolved. Yoon Seok hopes that the director will learn from this incident. Don't wait until your daughter also turns into a juvenile criminal to regret it. The director is getting better, returning together with her daughter. She called her daughter name and then walked over and hugged her shoulder. Smiled happily, but still said, "Why should I carry you? Mom is so heavy." So the mother and daughter of the director understood each other's hearts. The mother-daughter relationship gradually grew stronger, and on the juvenile court side, after going through a discussion during the break, they decided to continue opening the reformatory. The group bullying incident and Young Na's incident could not be ignored. The next day, the juvenile criminals were gathered together to hear the verdict. Each of them was sent to re-education camps for children. Juveniles are more strict in accepting re-education, and this time, parents also need to accept re-education with them. Especially Young Na's parents. The guardians bowed their heads. They all gathered and sat in the back, looking extremely ashamed. But in the end, they felt ashamed of their children, or felt ashamed of not educating them well. So the verdict was made. And at that time, the chief judge of the court called the chief judge of the Juvenile Justice Department to his office. It turned out that there had recently been a leak of exam questions at a high school, and moreover, the students of this school are all elite children. Among these children are children of major political figures. This is an extremely difficult case on a collective scale that the chief judge decided to give full authority to handle the case to the Judge Kong. He also accepted, after completing this case, he will resign to participate in politics. He always had a dream of reforming the law that applies to juvenile offenders, which only a member of parliament can do. And this case will also be his last. The chief judge is extremely confident. Unexpectedly, as soon as he walked out the door, he received a phone call from the police. His son was so scared that he did not dare to open the door. It turned out that his son was also involved in the case. After thinking about what he promised the chief justice, the judge was extremely angry and returned home. Fortunately, the police did not come because of the leak, but they only came to investigate a traffic accident that happened recently. The judge was angry and threw and destroyed things. It was clear that he had previously forbidden the mother and son from participating in that case. The mother confirmed that her son only participated once and then did not participate again. And moreover, there were many people involved. Only the principal knows the list, so many people committing the same violation should be fine. But now, the whole society is turning their eyes to this incident. Judge Kong knows that the matter is not that simple. If it is revealed his son's future and his career will be over, the judge angrily asked his son. That had warned him before this was an extremely dangerous thing, forbid him from participating. But why did he still disobey his words? He was extremely helpless and seemed to have given up, and there was no way to save this matter anymore. And the mother now realized the seriousness of the matter. She began to scream in pain because she had ruined the future of both her husband and son. The next day, the scandal was posted on the news, and Judge Kang's participation was also announced. But the son Sinyu did not want to discredit his father, so he ran to the police station to prepare to surrender. Late at night, after Judge Kong went out to eat with the councilman, he received a phone call from the police. It turned out that when Zin Bayu was crossing the street, he had an accident and was seriously injured. He is currently in the emergency room, watching his son in a coma, and his wife crying next to him. Judge Kong was extremely empty. He suddenly remembered that he had scolded his son to go die on his own and not drag anyone else along. His wife said that this was all his fault. In the past, Chief Judge Kong always compared Xinyu to his second son. He scolds him for being stupid. He is a judge's son, but is always ranked first from the bottom up. This makes him feel extremely embarrassed. That's why Xinyu feels extremely pressured, because he wanted to be recognized by his father. He studied very hard every day, but his achievements did not improve at all. At that time, the school knew that he was the son of a judge, so they proactively invited him to participate in the scandal. This led to his only mistake. But since that incident, Xinyu has felt extremely ashamed, so he withdrew from participating anymore. After all, he is a good child. Judge Kong never understood these things before. Finally, he realized his wrong actions. After that, he went to the congressman and wanted to withdraw from the election, but he was rejected by the other party. Because for South Korean politicians, an incident like that just happened is very normal and is considered a small thing. If he does not run for office, now the channels will follow him. The councilman asked to quickly resolve the case. Then Judge Kong secretly went to meet the person in charge of the case. He told this person that tomorrow in court he could deny it. At first, the person in charge did not understand what was going on, but on the day of the verdict, after seeing Judge Keen as the judge, he understood that not only were the students and the school denying their crimes. Parents even thought that passing the exam was a very normal thing. One parent stood up and explained that in the past, in order to pass Seoul University, one only needed to study hard. But now, if a child wants to get into Seoul National University, but only studies at school, it is impossible to pass. Therefore, parents need to spend a lot of money to hire graduate students to help their children study. Then, they will have to go through dozens of hundreds of exams at school to evaluate surveys. Hearing this parent's words, Yoon Seok couldn't help but be surprised. If it was so troublesome, why didn't they refuse? Just let the children study as usual, the parent continued to explain. Because the university exam is like a battlefield, and I want to be good for my child, so I agreed to that offer. If I don't agree, there will be other children who will take my son's place. On the rankings, even if the score is 1 or 2 points apart, it is still the top 1 and the top 10. This parent also emphasized that the fact that the children receive the test answers is not because the children study poorly, but because they need to spend time to review other subjects, thereby having enough time to fight on the harsh battlefield of life and death, called the university entrance exam. The parents' words made those present in court helpless. The more they talked, the angrier they became. And they even asked the judge when the case would end. Because her child still had to attend extra classes, it seemed like they still didn't feel guilty about this. In the end, the Judge Khan quickly ended the first instance trial. He also used his authority to release all the witnesses. This made Unsek feel extremely confused. She only asked one question, but did not expect the judge extremely angry. He also scolded her for not knowing how to be moderate. If she kept doing that, he would resign. This made Yoon Seok see something unusual. A few days after the trial, a student began to unexpectedly say a clue. He heard with his own ears the principal calling the person in charge to say that there were a total of 24 students involved in the problem. But in the end, it turned out to be 21 students. There are still 3 students who have not been mentioned here, but he could not hear the specific names. There was no doubt that those 3 students were the children of a congressman or someone with some authority. Even some children with good achievements, because if considering previous statements from parents, those children did not participate in the exam because they wanted to get high scores, but the purpose was to save time taking extra classes, or maybe these students withdrew from the problem halfway. When SAP draws a clue from this, in the end, she found 6 students as suspects. Indeed, in the list, she discovered the name of Sinu, the son of the Judge Kong. It seems her judgment was correct, but right now she still haven't found accurate evidence. In the third trial, Judge Kong seemed to be even more urgent. He immediately announced that the trial would be expedited and all requests for witnesses to attend were denied. The prosecutor said there was no reasonable reason to refuse important witnesses, but Judge Kong still firmly refused witnesses. In the end, Unso couldn't stand it anymore, so she announced a temporary halt to the trial. She even announced that because the judge was not following the order of a trial, It would take 1 hour to resume work. This surprised everyone. Afterwards, she was scolded by Judge Kong for daring to overstep her authority. Yoon Seok saw this and decisively told Xinyu's story. Judge Kong was indeed stabbed in the black heart. He loudly shouted at her that there was no evidence. He also threatened her that if she only relied on speculation and accused the incident, he would use every means to counterattack. Then two people disbanded in discord, but unexpectedly the next day, Yoon Seok reported the incident to the Chief Justice. Judge Kong saw that and wanted to deny it. But at that time, Yoon Seok brought evidence. It turned out yesterday she went to visit Sinbayu, who had just woken up. The boy should have been going to surrender himself that day, but suddenly felt that doing so would affect his father, so he did such a stupid thing. He felt that he needed to die. Yoon Soo convinced the boy, everyone will make mistakes, but the important thing is the corrective action after making that mistake. These words of hers had a great impact to Sinbayu. In the end, Sinbayu admitted everything himself. An Seok presented evidence in front of everyone. This made Judge Kong unable to say anything more. The chief judge gave him 1 day to pack up and proactively resign. But this does not mean that Judge Kong is a bad person. Judge Kang's purpose is to enter the political world, reform the law for minors. The result of idealism is, for a person who is likely to develop the judiciary, to be forced to resign. Judge Kong had to entrust the task of reforming the law to a good person like Yoon Seok. At the same time that the last trial took place, he quietly left. Only Judge Taiju came to see him off, and at the same time took out a photo. It turned out that he had also been a juvenile criminal in the past, and was also one of many who received help from Judge Kong. He started talking about the first day he took office. The judge also said he recognized him from the first time they met, and the judge was also extremely grateful for him has become a good person. At this moment, Judge Taiju bent down to tie the shoelaces for Judge Kong, just like the way he tied his shoelaces when he was a juvenile criminal. His appearance, when the judge's words made him remember and never forget. He always seemed to remember all this mankind and helpful actions towards him. The two of them said their final goodbyes together. In an emotional way. Judge Kong reminded him to absolutely follow the righteous path and not make the same mistakes as me. Then he also left. Judge Taeyu bowed to Judge Kong for the last time, showing his respect and reverence. Judge Kong left Yoon Seok a letter. In the letter, he said that he actually didn't hate her, just sometimes he was a little angry, but he saw that Yoon Seok's words were not wrong and her actions were even more not wrong. He hoped Yoon Seok could continue to become a good judge. He also hoped that she can complete his unfinished career, can carry out legal reform for minors in the future. This is the end of the movie. Goodbye and see you again in the next videos. Follow on channel.